Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel, your number one source for income-oriented investing. We have a bunch of special guests today. This is very exciting. So we have a bunch of PII pioneers, if you will. So we have obviously Jordan that manages or has the Covered Call ETF investing channel. We have Paul from Better Call Paul, and we also have Perry from Perry's PIIverse. So guys, welcome. Thanks for taking the time. I know, some of us were in different time zones and stuff. So thank you so much joining us today.
Of course.
Yeah, great to be here.
We're
Yeah,
going to
thanks,
talk about
Adrian.
all
Thanks
kinds
for
of
inviting
products.
us.
We're going to talk about all kinds of topics, rather, not product, but products too.
Yep.
So this is very exciting. And to the audience, if you guys like this, if you're interested in more, maybe we could do one a month. Hit that like button. Let us know that you like this type of discussion. It's going to be a good one. So I'll leave it up to Erica, the host, my lovely wife and co-founder, of course. It's all yours.
All right. Nice to see everyone, guys. I'm happy that you took the time. Happy Thanksgiving to all. I'm not sure when we're going to be publishing this, but happy Thanksgiving anyways. I just wanted to start off by doing a little quick roundtable of just quickly the story of how you got into PII and how you use the passive income. We'll start with Paul on my right here. And
Hi, Erica.
go
Thank
for
you
it.
so much. Okay, so really quickly, in 2020, I decided to fire my portfolio manager, my financial advisor, do my own investing, and that led me to YouTube, and that's when I found your guys' channel. And it's taken me a little while to go completely passive income, but now I am 100% covered call ETFs. And for myself, I lost my job September 1st. And I wasn't worried at all because by the time September 1st hit, I was already making 10,000 a month, which far exceeded my work income. And I was prepared. I was preparing for that day, for the last 5 years. So now I'm
Fantastic.
basically living off of it.
Nice. And would you reinvest a percentage of
Oh,
the
I do, of
income?
course. Yeah. I probably right now, maybe like 20% I'm spending and 80% reinvesting.
Oh, that's good.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. I just wanted to say real quick before I forget, I'm coming on here so to give Adrian a break there, so I'll be the host, but because he's very busy, and also to get the women viewers, those numbers up. We got to jack up those numbers of the women viewers. So
Yeah, sure. Be nice
go
to
ahead,
see
Jordan.
some.
I'll give it up to you.
Be nice to see
Okay.
some.
Again, yeah, I'll keep it brief. I started investing in 2020, coronial investor at the age of 30. I'm 35 now. I I started investing in dividend stocks like many of you guys on the other side of this camera have. But eventually I came to I wanted more out of what I already owned, and that sort of led me down to the road of cover call ETFs. I was kind of in the wilderness by myself until I found content like Adriano's, and then that really kind of straightened me out. And just to help share that knowledge has been a mission of mine as well. And I have a fourth baby on the way, so that's
Oh,
coming in
wow.
March. I'm gonna have the opportunity to um, live off of these and the fire lifestyle and all that. So I'll get to really put these products to the test and do what I say that I've always believed that they can do, which is escape the 9 to 5 and live off of this. So I'll have the security of my job in the backdrop for 18 months, which is a great healthy amount of time to really set the wheels in motion to help this community grow and with the education as well. But yes, I'm invested 100% in covered call ETFs, been so for 3.5 years. And I've seen my portfolio from 2020 of about 45,000 when I wasn't investing to about, without margin, it's about $376,000 to today. So just goes to show no matter if you apply the right logic, discipline, interest, and conviction to it, you can make a strategy like this work for wealth building. And that's what I hope to share in a video like this.
Nice. Well, congratulations on the
Thank
fourth
you.
baby and on the
Yeah.
portfolio. And also, Paul, I mean, congratulations on, setting up your own income in anticipation of anything that can happen with work. So we got someone who, does not depend on wages anymore. We got someone else who has a family, raising their family and also subsidizing their income with the PII or passive income investing. So it just proves that this type of strategy is kind of like a do-it-yourself. You could be hybrid, you could do completely all in, you could use the TFSA just for the income, tax-free income. So there's different ways that you could allocate the funds and use it. So Perry?
Hello. Hello. So yeah, my story is very similar to, I think, Adriano. I heard your story when you talked on interviews with others, how the both of you guys started, and Jordan, you just sort of hinted it again. My story is similar on the transition from bank managed mutual funds. Just go visit the bank and give them their money I did that for like decades, literally decades. I was the loyal, put the money into the mutual funds and getting that whopping, maybe 7% this year and maybe minus 20 when 2008 hits and, that kind of thing. So I've never been satisfied with mutual funds, but I really got the urge around the last few years. I'm sorry, I'm 62. I retired 2 years ago. So I did the big plunge then. A year and a half before I retired, I decided that I was going to start saying, you know what? I need to do some of my own DIY investing. I've always been interested in investing in finance, but I did penny stocks and stuff back when I was 18, 19, 20 years old. But then becoming an adult, I've sort of left that behind. But then I basically got the urge of saying, I want to do more again. So I did it. I retired in October. Actually, it was 2 years ago this month, October of 2023. In October of 2022 is when I decided I was going to, start experimenting. And I did what you did, Adrian. It was the same thing. I said, I want more income. I knew I was going to retire, but I was looking for income. I had no strategy. I had no idea. I just knew I wasn't looking for growth. I was looking for income. And so I think we all gravitate to the highest yielding dividend stocks. So I bought Suncor, Enbridge, you name, all the ones that basically offered that like the 3, 4, 5, 6% yields. And, it was great there, but then you'd watch Suncor go down $15. It's like, oh, wow, this is not working. So that was in October of 2022. And I really was lost you're saying, you know what, maybe I can't do this as good as anybody else because I'm not really moving forward on this. And I was actually I was working from home on this desk as we're speaking right now. And right beside me over here, I always had BNN News Network on. And these commercials started showing up from Hamilton called this HMAX. And it was like, HMAX offering 13% yields. And I'm like, what? 13% yields? I can't only get any more like 6 or 7. So of course you right away think this is too good to be true. I don't believe this. But my side is I don't sort of just believe, I have to actually dig into it a lot more. So I really deep dove because if I knew that I was looking for income, what are these things that are offering 13% yield? So that's how I actually started getting my first taste of these things called covered calls. I didn't know what covered calls were. I knew what they were as options, but I didn't know that they were part of ETFs. And I started watching, blogs and people talking about it and some of the bad news that kept coming out of them, that rock is bad and they erode and all this. So I actually even called Hamilton themselves and actually had a half-hour interview with them. And I said, wow, look, I'm looking at interviewing. I'm actually looking at investing in this. Tell me your side of the story on all these things about bad rock and the return on investment and stuff. And it was really good. They actually sort of gave me that first level of confidence that you're hearing a lot of fluff and you're hearing a lot of bad things that are basically myths. And so once I believed that was February of 2023, I bought my first Covered Call ETF. And of course, you know what happens, guys, is once you start researching, names start showing up, YouTube videos start showing up and stuff like that. I think somewhere there, I already had a strategy. But Adrian, when I saw your video show up, your video start showing up, you were basically validating the direction I was already going. And so that made me feel good that I was heading in the right direction. And then it basically ended. I bought my first Covered Call ETF in February of 2023. I retired in October 2023. I converted my entire $900,000 of RSPs and RRSPs and TFSAs over at that time. And I commuted my pension and moved it into there by November of 2023. So from 10 months, I went from not knowing anything about what a covered call was to being fully invested in covered call ETFs and in income strategy. It now basically pays for 98% of my entire pension or my entire retirement, other than CPP. And basically, I have so much money coming in from income on a monthly basis that I'm actually starting my two daughters' FIRE strategies on their TFSAs, so that hopefully they'll be like you, Jordan. And by the time they turn 40, they both will be retired on their TFSAs. So
Awesome.
Nice.
That's great.
That's a great story. Congratulations, Perry.
Thank
How does it feel to basically have complete control over your finances and your portfolio? Like there's different, there's all sorts of ways that people go about it. You have various accounts in Canada, the RSP, TFSA, non-registered. Then you got the Lira, you got, you got to switch it to a RIF or whatever. So how does it feel to have passed all of that, kind of like all of that those questions that people have when it comes around a time to retire around 60 years old? How do you feel? You must feel like so elated, like you don't need a planner, you don't need, you're completely autonomous, self-reliant on it. Talk to us about
that. Those few months from that year of 2023, when I literally went from A to B and then add C onto it, which means I was retiring as well as converting my entire finances to this strategy. It was like climbing Mount Everest, because not only did you have to worry about moving all your investments to something you don't really, you were just learning about, but you also had to learn about, okay, I knew what RSPs and RIFs and stuff there, but the mechanics of converting over to a RIF and having my LIF then merge with my pension that commuted, and then having my LIF split in half with a thing called one-time lifetime separation, where I actually had to create a new thing called a PIIverse. Like, that year was hard. Being on the other side of it, it's coasting. It's literally, I've got 4 RIFs or 3 RIFs and a LIF and 2 TFSAs. The nice thing is I just decide how much money I want each year. Say, okay, so I need $10,000 a month. I will just tell my RIFs to pay out about $15,000, and Bob's your uncle. It does the work. The rest of it is, as I think what Paul said, the rest of it goes for reinvestment, and it's not being reinvested because I have to support my NAV. Obviously, that's a part of it, but it's being reinvested because I don't need more than the $10,000 that's coming out of my money. So literally the rest of it is used to grow my portfolio, while my $10,000 a month of expenses are constantly being more than paid for, in addition to, as I mentioned, my FIRE strategy for my 2 daughters. So it's just literally changed my perspective on retirement from before, when I was hoping I'd have enough money to age 90, to money is not even an issue. So
that's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank
I love
you.
when you said that money is not an issue. This is the first time in my life, being, having worked since I was 14 and watching my parents work and my grandparents. Like, I went to work with my grandmother, when she was doing the sewing on Chabanel there in Montreal. And so it was just always work. So this is the first time in my life where I'm not anxious about where income is coming from. It's completely, it changes everything. I mean, there's just that level of anxiety that's no longer there. And then it's all about, okay, well, what do I do with all this money now? What do I reinvest in? The choice is basically yours. How do I reinvest? Where do I reinvest? And all that stuff. So we'll get into all that. Adri, do you want to add anything about your story?
No, I mean, everyone knows our story. We said it a billion times, a billion places. It's like a very similar combination of Jordan's story, Perry's story, right? It is a journey. The beginning is harder. There is a learning curve with the Covered Call ETFs, but like Perry accurately said, the initial part of setting up your accounts, taking everything under control, the paperwork, and trust me, I'm sure you guys would agree. I've spoken to over 1,000 people now, do coaching sessions for, to help people with that. That's the hardest part by far. It's the hardest, most annoying part to, take get your stuff back from your financial advisors or the banks. You open your accounts, you transfer the money, understand how the lira and RIFs work. But once you go to phase two, where everything's under your control, you understand how the funds work, and you're basically just managing your distributions every month, that's the easy coasting fun part. Right. So I know there's going to be a lot of people watching that are maybe not in it yet. They're thinking about it. They're in a transition. So what I would tell them, and just keep in mind, everyone went through it. The beginning is harder. It's the hardest, most annoying part. It's not really hard. It's just there's a lot of annoyances,
Monotony.
There's a lot of
but
steps. Yeah.
it's worth it for sure. And after that, it'll be much easier once everything's under your control. To us, the idea of PII was born out of the necessity of replacing our paycheck. I say that all the time. So to us, it seems like you guys are kind of considering it the same thing, right, Jordan? It's your paycheck now, right? You're just trying to supplement, eventually replace your paycheck, because when you grow up in a, like Erica mentioned, a working class family, it's always about work, 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 paycheck, paycheck, paycheck. So it gets indoctrinated into you. So we were always thinking about, once our mortgage was paid, how could we get yield? And that's when you start doing the research. And like Perry, well, individual stocks are risky. You only have 3, 4, 5%. Canada, there's actually a lot of dividend stocks, but then you start researching all the yields, and then you start discovering the closed-end funds, split funds, and then eventually all roads lead to what I feel right now is currently the best income vehicle, covered call ETFs. Maybe in 5 years it'll change, guys. So to me, like PII is more of a system, a mentality, whereas covered call ETFs is currently the best tool or vehicle to do so, in my opinion. But yeah, thanks for sharing, Perry. And a lot of your stories reminds me of ours as well.
Yeah, and that's funny you say that, Adrian, because it's exactly what I've been doing in my YouTube videos, is talking about the idea that PII is a strategy.
Yeah.
The ETFs are nothing more than Lego blocks that fit in the strategy. And matter of fact, I think we're seeing evolutions of that already happening. For example, I think there's enough of a mindset in the industry of these people that are creating these covered call ETFs and that they're like, you know what? Why can't we create other high yielding income type derivatives? And that, like, you're now seeing people using leveraged swap agreements as opposed to using covered calls. They're not even using covered calls anymore, yet they're still generating 50, 60% yields on some of these. So
yeah, like Roundhill you're talking about?
Yeah, like the Roundhill doing with that. So, and I was a little nervous about them, but I mean, what's really interesting is what you're saying is, I think the covered calls broke open the barn door and said, you know what? The day of 4% yielding fixed income is over. Yeah. Now you've got actual tools that are actually rivaling equity inside ROI. And you now say, why can't I have an income strategy now? Of course I can have an income strategy that now rivals equities in their ROI. And that's what I really like seeing that.
Yeah, that's why they were created in the first place. So we spoke to a bunch, like BMO, for example. We had lunch with them a few weeks ago. This is interest rates going to zero in 2008, 2009, where the stepping stone was the idea for the creation of these ETFs, because fixed income didn't yield anything when interest rates are low. And I think that's going to continue. I think interest rates are going to remain low for the foreseeable future. So these ETFs, I think, are just going to get more and more popular, I think.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Paul?
I think they're great. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I like you guys, I started off with the stocks, Suncor, like you mentioned, all the bank stocks. Then I learned about REITs, and so on and so on. But one by one, I realized while I'm making 4 or 5, 6% here, I could be making 12, 15, 20, right? And people call you a yield chaser, but I think yield chasing in the bad way is only if a company's going to zero. Right? If the yield's going up only because the share price is tanking, and eventually they're going to cut their dividend. But with the covered calls and the other strategies that are around nowadays, the income is so consistent. There might be a little increase or decrease here and there.
Yeah.
But I've shown people that over 2-3 years, my income's gone from $2,000 a month to $5,000 a month to $10,000 a month. I don't understand why people say it doesn't work. Like, what part doesn't work?
Yeah. Yeah, we could get into that a little bit. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jordan.
I was just going to say to Paul that what you'll probably notice over year, it compounds faster and harder than just your own portfolio size, which is which is the magic of finance when it comes to income investing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
For
funny you said, sorry, I was going to say the other thing you said, Paul, is that they're calling us yield chasers, or they're calling all of us as a collective yield chasers. I was ready to have my debate with Canadian in a t-shirt here in Winnipeg last week. And again, he would have done it in a nice way. So he's a great guy, no thing. But we were going to have that debate about passive income investing and the thing about yield chasing. And I'm going, okay, well, we never got to it because we changed all the questions, but I had an answer ready saying, okay, if we're yield chasers, then what do you talk about a growth investor in the ROI spectrum that does nothing but chase those high accumulating, appreciating NAV? Are they growth chasers? Like, again,
they're chasing growth.
They're chasing growth and we're chasing yield. Of course I'm chasing yield. I'm an income investor. So
yeah, one thing people don't realize is yield is just a percentage. It's just the percent of the NAV that they're selling for you and giving it out in distribution. So a lot of people don't understand it. This is why I try to focus a lot on total returns on my channel. I do the total return comparisons. It's very important. That just destroys all this yield chasing crappy narrative that makes no sense, because if you actually look at the total returns, they're very similar to the underlying, especially if you have that 25 or now 33% leverage, right? So the whole thing with yield chasing is like, people need to realize that, let's say, I don't know, like an HYLD or an HDIV or an HHIS, stop the dividend completely, stop the distribution. Well, the total return is going to be the same as if it had a 15% yield or a 25% yield or 100% yield, right? It's just part of the NAV that's coming to you. So that whole yield chasing argument, it's kind of a whole misconception, I feel, like or a red herring, if you will. I know, Perry, you'll know what that means in the tech industry, right? A distraction. That's what I feel about it. But this comes with knowledge. It comes with experience. And the people I feel bad for is really the new people who are very new at this, and they look and they say, oh, well, it's not good. It's not for me, rock, which is another misconception. And they put it in the back burner, not boner. Like Erica and I always say, all roads eventually lead to PII, right? Because you're going to have to replace your paycheck. You're going to have to retire somehow.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. They always are putting us on the defensive on it. And that's why I've been actually starting to go on the other side and actually putting them on the defensive on it. And again, I'm not talking about the average growth investor. The average growth investor that I've run into, and Adrian from Canadian in a t-shirt, he's literally like, look, it's not what I'm interested in, but it works for you guys, and it works during the consumption stage of your life. The people we're talking about is that small percentage of basically those that are on a jihad that basically say, if you don't believe in growth, you basically are wrong. And those are the people we're talking about, right? And
well, it makes no sense, because I do believe in growth also. I think
Absolutely.
It's a great investing style. It works. And what they don't get is that the income style, what we do, works also not only in the consumption phase, but all phases as well.
Right.
It's very simple. You want growth, you like the income strategy, and you want growth, just turn the drip on. That's growth. Right. I mean, it's the same. What do you guys think about that? That's how I see it.
Yeah, talking about the compounding effect real quick, for me, it was once I hit $1,000 a month, and reinvesting the 1,000 really, really accelerated the growth of the portfolio. You're essentially buying units, you're growing in units. And, my favorite part is when it's a bear market and you're just buying them cheaper. Yeah. So when it does recover, you get, your income increases, the portfolio increases. So it's really, the way I see it is more like the portfolio is like your life companion. So whatever you need it to do for you, you could just apply it. Yeah. And so for, like Perry says, I mean, they're like, adamant about, oh, well, if you don't like growth, if you don't share my opinion, you're wrong, so right. I don't I've never been like that. I'm a very open-minded person. I think people who don't consider all strategies to be kind of silly, because everyone is different. Everyone has their own life. We all live in our own world. We all do what we need to do to make us feel like this works for me. So yes. Yeah. Well, getting into the income, like if you want to talk about the actual income, we'll talk about the option premiums and how they are actually income from the covered call strategy. And option premiums comes in and they are classified as capital gains, as a tax classification. So you'll mostly get capital gains and ROC as the premium income. So and I've seen people say like it's not real income. It's
Your own money coming back.
yeah, and so that's when you realize a lot of people still don't understand, and why we keep trying to talk about it, to educate, because in my goal in life is that eventually the biggest con, or the biggest criticism of covered call ETFs will be, if you do not get a levered covered call ETFs, it will underperform the underlying. And that's accurate, but it's just such a small part of the whole story. And the fact that with the leverage, it's negligible, and it's actually, pretty much.
Well, but the argument is, like, for example, there's a lot of things. For example, they say the argument, I just put out our video about 2 weeks ago. It actually was one of my most popular ones. It was called Myth Busting the NAV Erosion Myths. And I used in that thing, like, okay, there is instances of NAV erosion. It is not the commonplace. It does happen. And I explained what NAV erosion is actually versus what it is not. If they see that the underlying is going down and the ETF is going down with it, they're like, look, that's NAV erosion. No, that's not NAV erosion. That would be the equivalent of saying Tesla going down $100 is NAV erosion. It's just the market play. The only thing that makes up NAV erosion is if the ETF provider is paying out more than they've earned. That is NAV erosion, and it's something that they can solve. And when you look at someone like Defiance, they did solve it with their QQQY and their IWMY. Like in my video, I actually show the chart of what happened when they were NAV eroding and when they actually made changes early this year and they fixed it. And now their NAV is stable. And they did it because they fixed the prospectus on how they were going to deal with the underlying percentages, right? So, and then the other thing you guys were talking about also there, Adrian, was the idea that they said it'll erode to, they're just giving you your money back and they're eroding to nothing. I'm going, okay, so I have an ETF that I've held for 2 years now. It basically, as of April of this year, has paid me all my investment back. This is Coney, C-O-N-Y. I have been basically living on house money on Coney since April of 2025. How is it still paying me my money back when it already paid me all my money back over 6 months ago, and it still is paying me dividends every month? The logic makes no sense.
No, there is no logic.
There's no logic.
I think for simplest terms for the investors on the other end of this, and Adriano really said it best in one of your latest videos about NAV erosion, and you defined it, I think, in probably the simplest terms, which is, what are we talking about? Capital erosion or total return erosion? And I think a lot of that can kind of fall under that umbrella, and then we can really define our terminologies that way.
Yeah, and there is definitely a difference between NAV erosion and NAV lag. NAV erosion is basically when you're seeing the NAV going down because they're paying more than they've earned. NAV lag is just the fact that, and this goes to this term of underperforming, which I don't know why these radicals on the growth side are saying that this is so important. It's like, I'm not in a horse race with you. I don't care if my income portfolio is not outperforming your growth on NAV. At the end of the day, it's meeting my goals, and my goals is that I need 3 times my monthly expenses. As long as my portfolio generates income 3 times larger than my monthly expenses, I couldn't care less if I was underperforming or overperforming the S&P or somebody taking all that money and putting it into growth stocks. It's not a race, because a growth stock does one thing it doesn't do for me. It does not give me any income. So.
Yes, as far as I'm concerned, especially in Canada, I know 100% for certain, okay, well, not 100%, but that they never pay out more than they earn. So that's typically referred to as the bad rock.
That's
right?
bad
And
rock.
I guess you could call that NAV erosion. I still think the whole thing is a complete myth. But if obviously as an investor, you don't want your ETF fund manager to pay out more than they're earning. And as far as I know, in Canada, they definitely don't do that. That's why you'll see Harvest or Hamilton sometimes lower the distribution, increase it when they can, lower it when they have to. That's a very responsible thing to do. Some of them will estimate the yearly and they'll do a more consistent distribution, and then maybe they'll adjust it if they have to, like Global X. But in general terms, I don't think anyone definitely does not pay more than the fund earns in terms of premiums. And I honestly don't think they do that in the US either. I've had many conversations with the guys at YieldMax. Obviously, they're a big target because they have very high yield, but that's because they have a lot of covered calls. It's as simple as that. So the whole NAV
There's a
erosion
couple of
thing,
examples. There are a couple of examples where I've seen it actually, Adriano. Actually,
Tell
I
me.
hold one of them, and that is USOI from Defiance. If you look
Okay.
at their chart, USOI literally is eroding. Like, and again, I hold it, so it's not as if I'm avoiding it. You can actually see the steps every time they pay a distribution. They go down, and they pay a distribution, and their NAV goes down, and it goes down. But that's rare. I mean, that's a rare instance. I don't see that happen much at all. Most of the time, it's not NAV erosion.
but that's because of the ex-dividend date, and they're probably giving a massive amount, right?
Yes,
That's
they
why
are.
you'll see it go down. So if oil, that's oil, right? So if oil goes down and they're paying out, let's say, all the premiums, of course you're going to see it go down, but it doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, that it's NAV erosion.
Yeah,
Right?
but
It's very hard.
they're under the ETF underlying called USO. That's why they're called USOI.
Yeah.
If you compare USOI, the underlying, to USOI, the ETF, to USO, the underlying,
Yeah.
USO basically does this, but USOI keeps going down and down and down. It is definitely parting from the underlying. But again, it's a very rare instance of it, Adriano. Most of the time, it's underlying performance that's causing the issue, right?
Yeah. Even with dividends reinvested?
Yeah. Well, with dividends reinvested, you can keep it up. The problem is you're watching the price of USOI keeping going down and down and down.
Yeah.
I think it was at 18. It's now at about $6 or so. It keeps going down. So
Because if you do USO versus USOI with dividends reinvested, the charts look like they follow each other 100%.
yeah, with the dividends fully reinvested. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
but
basically
it's
means
under
you're not-
it is underperforming, and this is why I like to say not all cover call strategies or option strategies are created equal.
Right.
So it depends what your priority is, and the dead giveaway is the yield. If the yield is really extremely high, they're giving up a lot of upside.
Yes,
so if
they
you
are.
have these little rallies, you're going to miss on. Of course, you're still getting these big distributions, but of
Correct.
course, the NAV is going to go down over time because you're not keeping up with the underlying as much. Plus,
Yep.
they're giving out big dividends, which is from the NAV. So
Yeah, and they're not giving up on that either. Sorry, we're dominating the conversation,
No,
but
no, it's
they're not giving up on their distributions. Instead of doing 88% yields, why not go back to like 50% yields and sort of protect the NAV a little bit more? Again, it's your choice to invest them in or not. If you see that, just don't invest in that one, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's the strategy, right? If you want maximum amount of income because you really need it, let's say for 6 months, you could go with these. People spend it all, but you have to understand that you're basically spending a big chunk of your actual investment. The dividends,
right.
the distributions are part of the NAV, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the big beat the market and the growth bros? Basically, I know Adriano talks a lot about there's a bit of like the sense where you have to prove people wrong, and and Adriano talks a lot about wanting both income and total returns to be similar to the underlying. So obviously you have to consider reinvesting the distributions to get to that. And the sweet spot is that basically the experience of doing that, reinvesting when needed and then taking when reinvesting when you don't need the money and then taking it when you do need the money. The beauty about that is that you're having experience with your portfolio so that when you do need to draw down, it's as simple as just using the income without selling assets and so forth. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. And I was just curious, Paul, now that you're in the phase where you're using a lot of the income, can you talk to us about your basically your monthly routine and how do you take the income?
I mean, I am still very, very new to this because I only stopped working in September.
Okay.
And I got one more paycheck from work, and then I got my vacation pay. So I haven't really got to the point where I have to live off my portfolio.
Okay.
But I have been for quite a while now taking all the money out of my cash account, my non-registered account, which is about $600 a month. And then I started doing a case study back in May where I was pulling $1,000 a month out of my tax-free savings account with RBC, just to prove that that account will sustain itself. And I have a lot of people, even like the dividend guy, Mike Rowe, who's following me, and he said basically that account will be zero in 5 years, right? So
Yeah, so you have to prove them wrong, right?
yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm trying to do, is prove them wrong. So I built this account with $55,000 where I'm making $1,600 a month. It's a little over 30%.
Yeah.
And I'm taking out $1,000 and then reinvest the other 600. And see, the thing is, the account goes up and down based on the market. It has nothing to do with when I withdraw the money, right? Because I can withdraw the money and 2 days later, the market shoots up and all of a sudden I'm at all-time highs. So I pulled out $1,000 and then my account's up $4,000, and then a couple of days later, Trump does something, says something, right? And then my account goes back down a few $1,000s, but it literally has nothing to do with me pulling out the $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah, in the last Blossom tour, we met a lot of people in Toronto and Montreal, and I like to ask them how they use the income, like what they use it for. And a lot of people, within the couple or even single people, they will put PII Covered Call ETFs into their TFSA. They will remove the income tax free, and they'll pay for stuff. There's people that have their children in figure skating, competitive dancing, hockey. So they completely pay the whole every month, and the kids are happy. They're happy because they can afford it. I heard from people that pay special health care for their elderly parents. I love the story. I love all of the stories. There was one who is a contract worker in the healthcare industry. Once the contract is up, they feed their portfolio, so they have the 3 months off and they don't need to find a part-time job while they're finishing their semester in school. They could focus on their education. There's so many different ways to use that income, and it's really like I always say, like, I'm trying to get the human interest stories into this universe, because it goes so beyond beating the market. And in fact, if you want to beat the market, I mean, look, I know people here in Panama that, we need a lot of international people. They beat the market with crypto. I mean, they're doing 50% every year, for the last 6-7 years. So they're laughing at us and income and index investors, because they're like, oh, well, that's nothing,
Yeah.
So it depends on, it's obviously depends on risk tolerance and your experience with the market. Everyone who likes what they invest in, everyone who likes their own style will obviously, tend to talk more about it. And again, the proving people wrong. We're here, we're all in, and we're just doing our thing every month. We stay in our lane. I consider myself completely disconnected. I was living on a beach for 3 years, so I was completely disconnected. But I could only do that because I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have to do any of that. So it's very interesting to talk to people and how they perceive the income and what they use it for. So
yeah,
I thought Go ahead.
Yeah. So and you're talking about people and examples of how they're using their income.
Yeah.
In November of last year, I started this mission of actually trying to fill up both my daughter's TFSAs to basically give them fire. I mean,
Nice.
I was generating way more money than I needed. So I figured I could either give them money or put them in a strategy where the money will constantly grow on their own behalf. So this is where they say, give them fish or teach them to fish.
Right.
So I'm teaching their TFSAs to fish. So I have 2 daughters, and it's actually, I get everybody asking me, how's your daughter's portfolio doing? How's it doing? And the reason they're doing it, because they want to do the exact same thing for their adult children. And so what I did is, I have one daughter that's the younger daughter. She has a modest income. She couldn't live on it on her own. There's no way. She has a boyfriend. She's now, having a boyfriend, and they just bought a house last week.
Wow.
They could not have bought a house if my daughter didn't have the TFSA generating over $1,500 a month out of the TFSA, so that she can basically pay her half of the mortgage from her TFSA, which basically means her salary is free for everything else she wants to use. So there's that one example of one daughter that literally could buy a house and pay her mortgage payments because of her TFSA, because of her income portfolio. And then my older daughter, who has a 6-figure salary, she's doing really well. She really doesn't need the extra cash. So what she's doing with her TFSA, which I just actually added more to it because of some generational stuff, my parents handing money down, so I've helped fill it up more. I just structured hers now that she's basically getting $2,700 a month out of her TFSA. And the strategy she's using now, because she really doesn't need it as much as my other daughter, she takes the money out. Half of it goes into RRSPs. She gets a tax deduction on that contribution from tax-free money coming out of her TFSA, and then reinvests it in her RRSPs so that she can now grow her RRSPs, get a tax deduction, and still have half of it available for. She loves going on trips, so she goes and spends the rest of it on trips. So there's 2 examples of the FIRE strategy, as opposed to me, the retiree, which everyone thinks that's what it's for. No, why are we doing that now? Why can't younger adults like you guys have a strategy that says at 30 and 40, I can now be less dependent on my employment income? So
fantastic. And she's doing it all on her own, transferring from TFSA to RSP, and she's got
my younger one is. My older one is not. She's the one that just says, set it up and then I'll spend it. My younger one actually joined Blossom. She actually met Maxwell this week at the Winnipeg Blossom Users Group. So she's really figuring, this is my new job. Like literally her goal now is that TFSA and FIRE is her new job. And hopefully someday in the future, she can quit her job, and this will be her job, will be to manage her FIRE strategy. So
fantastic. Yeah, we convinced our best friends that that they just had a baby and she was considering going back. We're like, don't go back to work. This is your new job. We set up their TFSAs. This is what you need to do every month. And she's just doing the calculation, and then the income comes in every month, and it's like the brain is blown because she makes more now than she did at her salary, at her job, right. Tax free. So I mean, it's I love hearing those stories because it really is a game changer. It changes. Now the direction of your daughter's lives is going to be, focused on increasing that income, because guess what? Cash flow is something you'll always need. Right. No matter where you are in life. It's not just for 60 plus. It's, it's right. Anytime people need money, you need income. So, a little segue into the success of your YouTube channels now. I wanted to ask yourselves if you could just briefly talk about that, and if you could discuss some of the questions that you guys get from your audience now that you have, you interact with people and all that. So I'll start with Jordan.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I've been running Covered Call ETF investing ever since, I mean, I was at an entrepreneurs group in just locally, and this would have been November of 2022, and there were lawyers and naturopaths and someone who had a robotics farming company, and anyways, you get the idea, right? A lot of entrepreneurs in one spot, and we were all talking about like, what do you want to do? It gets to me, and I'm like, I want to talk about Covered Call ETFs. At the time, didn't really know much. I only had ZWC and HYLD in my portfolio. Those were the two mainstays. March of 2023, that's when I really get the channel up and going. And just try to put myself into as many uncomfortable situations as humanly possible. Sometimes difficult, as you guys would probably have seen. I recently did, me and Carl Chung from 9 Point just responded to Ben Felix. But that is the point. We grow by putting ourselves in different places. And so as far as like answering questions, a lot on margin right now. I think it's a really it's an undermined topic at the moment, and that this is something I've been thinking about ever since. I got news of baby number 4 is how to increase income. I can do it internally within the portfolio for more yield, or I can do it externally by encroaching on some margin. So that's been a topic that I'm active in right now, and get that information to the audience as far as like what is margin actually all about, And because we don't really talk about it, yes, in the form of, our funds being leveraged in of themselves. But what happens if you add this other, a debt borrowing component on top of that? So that's something actively going through that to get out, the actual information out to everybody. But of course, performance as well is a big one. As I, had responded to Ben's stuff there, it was a lot of that conversation and questions, even without what Ben had done with his video, is right. You got one fund versus the cover call fund versus the underlying fund. The fund with the cover calls underperformed. But as you all know, our portfolios are very dynamic. They're changing. There is this modernization of cover call funds right now. And to truly just hold one fund for 30 years, I don't even know if that's really a thing. I think as everything evolves, we're going to evolve along with it. Adriano, if you just stuck with your BMO funds back in 2020, and if you still have them to today, I don't know if your channel is as big as it is now because you had to evolve. So we're going to evolve as a group, and we're going to just show like I've been doing this every week for almost 100 weeks. Show my portfolio in the post section and just show people, my total return versus everybody else. They can scroll through and check it for themselves. But yeah, a lot of it is performance. Cost of trading is another big one. I've seen this one recently. The price of cover call funds, they're expensive. So that's a new one that seems to that keeps popping up. Of course, taxes and rock are sort of the
Yeah.
big ones as well.
Yeah. I would say they're actually getting cheaper. For what you're getting for that active option management, I think they're really cheap. I mean, if we're talking 65,
No,
75,
no, no. It's
85,
sorry. It's like the price of the ETF, like the price of it, not
the actual,
not the management fee, but like
the
the
stock
fund is
price?
$10. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've
Oh,
been seeing
okay.
that a little bit more.
Really? Well, that's all relative to the distribution. I guess
That's
Yeah, I was
it,
gonna say that's relative. It's like
Yeah.
I
if
know
it's
that the
50% yield,
ETF
it doesn't matter
issuer
if it's a
sets their
$50.
own price. So if someone's
Yeah.
confused about that, ETF issuers, they set their own price when
Yeah.
at inception.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm writing down the questions here.
Yeah, no
yeah,
problem.
Yes, price. So we had the pleasure of meeting a lot of the fund managers, and these guys, I have to say, they're talking about entrepreneurs and the Blossom guys as well. I mean, I like those young guys at Blossom. They're entrepreneurs. They're Canadians. I like Annika. She's like the pillar there. She's pretty much a little bit on the back end, and I like those guys. They're entrepreneurs. They're Canadian. It's refreshing to see it. They got a Brandon, the face. He's got such a cute face. So it's fun. It's fun to see them grow. I think that it's a really nice thing. I think that, despite different strategies that we have with them, we have the same goal, and that's to educate people, to make them invest, because you need to be investing. You need to be in the markets. It's the only way towards freedom. At the very least, get yourself in the indexes. I mean, so I like that about them. And every time they get a new person to join Blossom that goes into an index or whatever, I just know that those are future PIIers, because eventually you're gonna need the income. So that's great. I love that. But yeah, and the fund managers as well, they're spending money on market research, and they're seeing that people want the income. And that's why there's so many, there's more competition now between the fund managers and the ETFs that they launch. So that's interesting about the ETF price. But yeah, congratulations, Jordan. I think that it's great what you're doing. The more people that show their portfolios, the income strategy, the more that, you could turn around that misconception of whatever yield chasing or whatever people still say nowadays.
And the other thing to that, Erica, as honestly, I have huge aspirations for us in this country. Like, I hope that if people are coming to Cover Call, like if this is their gateway drug into finance, like let it be
Yeah.
so. Because I can tell you, as I said at the top of the video, from 18 to 30, I wasn't invested. I was doing nothing. That's more dangerous than
Dangerous,
coming
yeah.
into Cover Call ETFs and getting into an index. At least you're making something. So, you know what? If Canada has an economic renaissance, an entrepreneurial renaissance, and if Cover Calls can kind of help move that ball downfield, let it be. And like we're seeing it, this style of investing, as far as I've been invested, I haven't seen anything quite like it. There hasn't been some kind of evolution in just the modernization of something like we've seen with this. It's like going from VHS to like
Yeah.
DVDs or DVDs to Blu-rays, right? It's like in such a short period of time, and it's condensed and I mean, I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah,
It's
it's very,
it's a
very well
great
said.
thing.
I agree with you. You know what? We'll talk offline because I've got a bunch of, I'm like you. I want to make this really big. I have a lot of ideas. Sometimes
Me
I get
too.
there's too overwhelming, but I need to get a web developer on staff here because and we'll talk offline, but I agree. And like going back to the example of the 4% rule, working till you're 65, 4% drawdown, like it's reckless. It's irrelevant right now. And a lot of people are, you know, it's been just the same story over and over and over. So you assume that that is what you have to achieve.
Well, I think the reason that's happening, and this again, I have no problems poking the bear because
Mhm.
there's a lot of people that sort of take these experienced, certified consultants and analysts and these guys that say that's not the way. We'll use Ben or whoever you want to use. He would never do that. Or all these experts over the 30, 40 years, this is not I. The standard is you're supposed to use a 4% rule. The standard is when you start going from accumulation to consumption on a growth strategy, your job is to do meltdown and drawdown. That's just the way you do it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm going, yeah, there's lots wrong with that. Like, let's stop playing this game. You guys are in a paradigm that you guys are stuck in. And this is just like the Swiss watchmakers. Again, I've done a lot of research. I've been an architect my entire life, an IT architect. So we had to do a lot of things about paradigm shifting and stuff like that. And you go back to the days of when the Swiss watch was the watch in the world. Nobody beat them. They dominated the market. And then all of a sudden, the Japanese came up with the little electronic watches that worked for $10 and were more accurate than the Swiss watches. And for the first 5 or 10 years, the Swiss watchmakers, instead of saying, let's adapt to this new change, they fought it. They said, no, but it's not crystal and it's not doing this. Well, guess what happened to the market? Those that kept resisting fell behind. I think we are in a paradigm shift right now because I think covered call ETFs are a game changer in the income space. There's no more things called fixed income, which are always the poor child you did at the end of the day when you're getting older and you had to switch into something more income. You've now got covered call ETFs that are rivaling equity in stocks in ROI, and they just can't grasp it. So they keep turning around and saying, yeah, but you got to follow the 4% rule. No, I don't have to follow the 4% rule. I'm withdrawing 10% a year out of my portfolio, and my portfolio is going up. I'm not following 4% rules. Now, if I were a growth investor, I would be bankrupt in 10 years if I was taking 10% of my portfolio out and spending it. I'm not going broke. I'm actually going up, and I'm spending 10% of my wealth every year. So they just don't get the paradigm, and it's easier for them to sit on the sidelines and say, but that's not the way we were taught, as opposed to then change your mind and start adapting to it and start embracing it. Even if you don't agree with it, at least open mind yourself and say, you know what, maybe I'm still not willing, but I can see how covered call ETFs are game changers in the investment field.
Yeah, I'm with you. I see this as a disruption.
It is a disruption.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm with you. I agree. What
Yeah,
about you,
it's
Paul? Tell us about your channel, how it grew, and your experiences.
Yeah, so I mean, I started on Blossom back in November of 2024, and I really liked using Blossom. Although I almost quit originally because I did get some real nasty comments from growth investors, and I thought, why do I want to be a part of this? But I stuck out with it for a little bit longer, and then you start getting more positive feedback from people, and so I kept posting, and my posts are short. I noticed some people have these university level long growth investing posts, too much for me. So I'll do a snapshot of my portfolio. I try to be transparent. This is what I'm actually making. This is what I'm actually doing. This is what I've accomplished. And sometimes I'll pick a specific ETF. Like I like to post about ENCL. This is how much I've made from this one ETF, and just do the post. And it was, what I guess about 4 months ago that Mo from Momentum Finance, he reached out to me and said he wanted to interview me. And it was like, sure, that'd be great. Let's do it. So I went on his channel, and then Ari reached out to me and he wanted to interview me. And after that, I think, I kept posting and my followers kept going up on Blossom. And that's when my wife told me, you have to start a YouTube channel. And at first I was like, you realize this is not as easy as you think it is. You don't just start a channel. But she kept, nagging at me for a few weeks. And finally, July 18th, I started my channel. And it's been almost 3 months. And I think we got really lucky because of all the followers on Blossom and being able to share videos on Blossom. We got monetized in about 7 weeks. Although there's no money because we're still waiting for that letter. You get that letter in the mail from YouTube. Yeah. We've never got the letter. And now there's a postal strike. So it's all fictitious money anyways. But yeah, we did really well. We got, then Marcos decided to interview me as well after we created the channel. And that really helped. We went from about 900 subscribers to 2,000 subscribers in like 4 days.
Wow.
So yeah, it was amazing.
That's great.
I think we just passed 6,000 subscribers.
Wow, congratulations.
Almost at 100 videos. So yeah, it's been great. It's been fantastic. Nice. It's been a lot of fun.
What kind of feedback are you getting? Is there specific questions that you keep seeing over and over?
So first of all, surprisingly, I get a lot of people private message me on Blossom and just say thank you. A lot of people just message me and say, I feel like I'm in a similar boat as you. I'm about your age. I just lost my job, or I want to retire. And, thank you for your channel and, for everything you do. Not even a question, just thank you, which is so nice, right? But I get questions about, of course, the NAV erosion. I get a lot of questions about tax implications, which maybe I'm ignorant, but I don't really pay too much attention to the tax implications. I mean, if you make money, you make money, and you have to pay tax, you pay tax. But luckily in Canada, we have the TFSA, and I got about 50% of my money is in TFSA, and then about, I think, just over 40% in my RSP. So it's very small portion is in my cash account. So anyways, but people ask me about taxes, and I'm not an accountant, so I can't really advise them that way. A lot of people want to know what to buy, right? They just send you a message. Okay, if you're going to buy one ETF, which would it be? If you're going to buy 5, which 5 would you buy? If you're starting over, what would you buy?
What's your favorite ETF?
Well, my largest holding is HHIS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my largest holding. MSTE is my second largest holding. Believe it or not, YTSL is my third largest holding, but only because it keeps going up in value. Yeah. I've sold at least 1,000 shares, but it's still my third largest holding.
Good. Fantastic.
Yeah. So, but I talk to people first and try to find out what exactly is your situation. Because if it's a 20-year-old, I try to lean them more towards XEQT and FEQT are two of the ones I like to, tell people maybe take a look at those. And then if they really, really want some passive income, to take a look at some of the other stuff that we hold. People will ask me if I drip. The problem with Wealthsimple is if you put it on drip, you have to drip everything. You can't just pick 1 or 2 ETFs to drip. So I don't bother dripping. But that's what they want to know what your reinvestment strategy is.
Right.
Yeah, the common stuff, right? The taxes, I get it all the time, especially for the non-reg. It's actually a lot easier than people think. It's very, very easy. And that's just another advantage of the covered call ETFs. They're extremely tax efficient. Most of what you're getting is capital gains and ROC, which, I put ROC under the same umbrella as capital gains tax-wise. The CRA does it also. So why not, it's just delayed capital gains when you sell. But most of it's capital gains and ROC, and everything's on the fund manager's website, the whole breakdown of each ETF. But once you start getting that knowledge, you're going to guess 95% accurately. This ETF is going to give me, 80% capital gains and ROC, 15% Canadian eligible dividends, and maybe 5% foreign income or something like that. You could easily guess it once you get that knowledge. But I don't like the fact either that, like you said, Paul, taxes kind of stops people, like, because taxes is a big thing in Canada, right? Because taxes are high in Canada. But like you said, people need to start with the TFSA anyway, which you don't have to even worry about that for now. So
it's funny you said that because It's the only thing I do. It's the only thing I have no covered calls in is in any of my non-registered. I and the reason is I like being the laziest investor. And the one thing I hate is ACB and calculating ACB because the Rock is taking it down and stuff. All I need to do is hire an accountant and he can do all that work for me. But
Yeah,
all my covered calls are in RIFs and TFSA. So I have no tax implications other than the fact that when I withdraw it from the RIF, I get taxed as income. It's about as black and white as that.
But now even the brokers track your ROC and lower your cost basis for you automatically.
Yeah.
It's never I tell people all the time, it's never been so easy to do it yourself investing, no matter what style. And we've heard it today. I mean, you guys have all different strategies. Which accounts do you use? You use this account for the income and then something else for growth. I've literally heard a billion ways of doing it and managing your portfolio, your distribution management as well. Paul, you talked about that. It's an FAQ that you get. This is, I tell people, it's all stuff you're going to learn how to do on your own with experience, time, and you're going to do it the way it best suits you. There's no right or wrong way to do it. I could show you, I could tell you what I do, but don't just copy me. You have to think about your situation and your objectives, where you're at in life, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and the funny thing and Paul, you said it right. I mean, I don't know why so many people are fixated on the tax questions. At the end of the day, if you're earning a lot of income and you have to be taxed, you get taxed. It's not as bad as people are saying with regards to taxes. And again, like you said, covered call ETFs are actually relatively tax efficient inside the non-registered accounts. But at the end of the day, if you're making 100,000 and you have to pay taxes on 100,000, hey, surprise, you were working as an employee on something and you were being taxed 40% on your income there. Anyways, I'm just shocked that is actually the biggest factor that actually new DIY investors are worried about, as opposed to how do I get my income levels higher? How do I have it easier to manage? How do I make sure I'm more sustainable for the next 30 years? To me, those should be the questions people should be asking, not like, why am I paying 2% more in taxes or less by not doing it the right way, you know?
Yeah.
Could be the easiest thing to think about for a newer investor.
Yeah.
Right. It's like those questions will come later when they get a little bit more experienced at it, but they feel like they got to ask something. So taxes are just the thing that they can ask.
It's definitely not a showstopper to get invested, but it definitely, it'll come tax season, people have the questions, so they figure they'll ask. So all right, guys, we're over an hour now. We'll get Perry to quickly talk about your YouTube channel, and then we'll get into some serious stuff.
Oh wow, there's serious stuff coming. So
yeah, I don't know. Hopefully you guys have a little bit more time, if you don't mind. If you have to go, right? This is not a prison, right? We're all fine. We're all free here. We could do what we want, but
passive income prison.
Yeah, the passive income prison. Hey, once you go through a Gary Gill interview, you can do anything.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so mine. First of all, the funny part is Paul and I have almost the same timeline with regards to when we joined YouTube. His was on the 18th and mine was on July 16th. So we were literally almost came onto YouTube at the same time as channel people. But I joined I think it was late 2023 into Blossom. I did not come on to Blossom to become an influencer. I came on here because I had nobody real life to talk to when it came to investing. Like my wife, my family, my neighbors, my coworkers didn't care anything about investing. So I I kept on hearing a few people talking about Blossom. That's why I joined. And as it grew, I'm an A-type personality. I will talk. I want to actually post and talk about my progress. And people started seeing my spreadsheet, which has become the infamous spreadsheet that everybody wanted. I mean, if I could have sold it for $10 each, I would have made more money than my investments actually right now on this thing. So I kept getting this increasing pressure of saying, Perry, can I buy your spreadsheet? Can I have a copy of it? Can I have it? And I said, no, I can't do it. It's too complex. Being the nerd that I am, it literally is God for me. And if I gave it away, I'd become a call center trying to support my own spreadsheet. So I kept saying no. And then basically the pressure got so high, I said, okay, here's what I'll do. I'm going to do a YouTube video. I don't even have a channel. I'll do a YouTube video and I'll do a 1 hour deep dive tour of my entire spreadsheet. So if anybody wants to build their own spreadsheet, they can use inspirations from my spreadsheet and do whatever they want to do. So that's how I started my YouTube. Again, a lot of people in Blossom kept asking me, how are you doing 37% yield? How are you, how are you making your monthly income go from 20,000, 25, 30, 40? And not last month, I actually broke 50,000 a month on my income, and they wanting to know how to do it. So I got that pressure. So when I created my YouTube video, instantly I got a ton of followers and subscribers onto it. And they said, we want to see more. We want to see more. So that sort of got the ball rolling, is that I said, okay, you know what? Why not? As I already mentioned to all of you, I am an IT architect by nature. Everything I do in my entire history of architecture was about building patterns, understanding solutions, and knowing how I can fit it into a pattern. So I turned around and said, you know what? I'm retired anyways. Why don't I teach new investors patterns in investing as opposed to patterns in IT? Because there is a pattern. And again, if you understand how patterns work, there is a pattern to things, right? So if you look at my YouTube videos, I currently, and I can't think of one right now, I have about, I'd say about 30 videos right now. Not one of them talks about Covered Call ETFs. They're all about the strategy around income investing. How do you set goals? How do you set strategy? How do you take a goal to a strategy and then start implementing it? How do you protect and do sustainability and by via diversification? And how do you protect for, your NAV on, reinvestment and rebalancing? So all my videos, and I think, Paul, I'll take it as a compliment, but mine are almost like going to university and going on a course. So I'll do 1 hour videos that literally talk about the entire strategy, or I'll do a 1 hour video on dispelling all the myths about erosion and talking about the mechanics of erosion versus lag versus actual NAV growth, and showing them then comparing the actual theory to my actual portfolio. And so I'm getting a lot of interest from newer investors that basically were sitting there. I'm just buying these ETFs randomly and sticking them in my TFSAs and stuff, but I don't even know what I'm doing. So they're actually coming to me. And again, I appreciate it, just like Paul does. I get a ton of private messages saying, thank you for giving me some clarity, because I didn't know how to run my portfolio. I just knew to keep buying ETFs, but I didn't know how to run them. So that's sort of been more my shtick, is following income strategies and comparing income strategies to growth strategies and to hybrid strategies, and to tell people nothing's wrong. Like at the end of the day, if you have some growth stocks and you have some covered call ETFs, you don't have to be one or the other. You can be both, right? So, and the funny thing you said, my favorite stock or my favorite holding, I have 36 holdings. 3 of the 36 are stocks, pure growth stocks. The rest are all covered call ETFs or derivative-based covered ETFs. My favorite holding is Athabasca Oil. It's not even a covered call, because it's generated almost 80% in growth, and it's just a constant moneymaker for me. So that's my favorite. It's not even a covered call. So.
Yeah, that's the best thing about you could just hybrid investing styles. I mean, that's
absolutely, yeah.
fantastic.
And there's no reason you can't do both.
Exactly.
And that's why I talked about that one thing. I just wanted to show it if you can. Let's see if I get this work. I hope this works.
Yeah, that's it.
So in this one here, and this is what we were just talking about, the whole idea is in my videos, I try to talk about strategy. So one of my videos actually talk about the income strategy versus the growth strategy. And I ask all the viewers, these red dots are where I am. Where are you on these red dots? Because if you don't know where you are on this spectrum, you've got problems. You need to then sit back and start building a strategy, because if you're here, how you build your strategy is going to be different than if you're on the growth side versus if you're what's called a income focused investor. So again, I try to pull the investor back towards, let's first think about what your goals are and where you are actually as an investor. And then we could start working towards actually which ETFs you want to pick and stuff like that. So
Very
I
nice.
think I dropped it. I think it should be gone.
Yeah. Perry, I have a quick question for you. Sorry. I think out of the four of us here, I think you're probably the one with the most holdings and maybe the most active, the most that needs the most tracking. So my question to you is, why hold all like 36 holdings? We have a lot of single stock covered call ETFs. Why bother with that? Is it because you really like the companies? Is it because you like taking in that more income and then deciding what to do with it? Or do you have the belief in the companies? Tell me a little bit why you're so active.
Yeah, and it actually, I have two videos that actually talk about this thing where you sit on that spectrum. So there is what's called the conservative income investor. And Adrian, I've seen you move away from holding a whole bunch down to about 5 or 6.
10, 12, yeah.
Yeah, 10 or 12. So you're now moved towards that, what's called that conservative income growth investor that basically says, look, I don't need to really be aggressive because I'm hoping that I get a yield about 10 or 20, maybe 25%. And if I have a yield objective of only like 20%, I don't need to go after any of the ultra yielders because those are needed if you really want to push the envelope on moving your yield further to the left, right? So with me, I wanted to actually reach a target of 3 times income expense. And when I had a portfolio of only 1.2 million, to get to 3 times monthly income, I had to have basically a generation of over $30,000 a month in order to do that. So the way to do that, you do the math, reverse do the math. I need to have a yield that exceeded 30%. So the only way I could do that is to reach and leverage both some of the more conservative covered call ETFs that are generating 10, 15, 20, but then also include in my portfolio some of the ultra yielders. So the way I do it right now is I do heavy diversification. 50% of my portfolio is all my conservative growth yielding ones. So of course, it's not going to be a shock to any of you. It's almost all Canadian. So you'll get the Harvests, the Evolves, the Hamiltons. They're the ones that hold down the fort for me, that make sure that I can get 20%, 25% yield. Then what I do with the other half, I use the ultra yielders to get me up to 35, 40%. And I only do target weights of 3%, 4% on each one of them, so that the risk of one of those ultra yielders going bad, even if it goes bad, let's say if it's USOI, Adriano, let's say USOI fell off the face of the earth. I haven't seen one ETF ever fall off the face of the earth, but let's assume USOI fell off the face of the earth. I would only lose 2% of my entire portfolio. So that's why you see 35 holdings, because I'm taking a lot more risk with the ultra yielders, and therefore their holding weights are smaller. That's why I actually are more granulated on that side.
Okay. So to summarize, you have your main thing is I have a yield target. I have a yield target. I have a yield target. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to achieve that yield target. Right. My question to you is, now that your portfolio is growing with the reinvesting, are you going to start reducing those ultra yielders and go more with the conservative ones? Because obviously, as time goes on, you don't need as much yield.
You're reading my mind, Adriano. So there's 2 reasons I'm actually going to in the future. I don't know what that trigger point is going to be, Adriano, but you actually are right. There's 2 reasons I'm going to eventually go back towards where you are, which is in the more conservative index-based, Canadian-based covered call ETFs that can generate me 20, 25%. So the first reason is exactly that. My portfolio is growing enough that I can actually go down to that level and still meet my 3 times expenses ratio. The other one, which I just learned about only a month ago, which is actually going to inspire me to do it, is that I just learned about the U.S. estate tax on basically holding U.S. covered calls in your account as a Canadian. If I pass away, there's some major U.S. tax complications that happen because I held over $100,000 worth of U.S. investments. I don't want to deal with that, or I don't want my beneficiaries or my executor to deal with that. So before I get too old and the risk of me passing away becomes greater, I want to start eroding and moving my US covered calls to Canadian ones so that I can reduce the risk or eliminate the risk of the US tax estate problem. So you are right. I will be moving in that direction sometime. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Hey, Adriano, I actually got him beat. I have 43.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's the
yeah,
bigger one
right?
than me.
Yeah.
So, Paul, why don't you go ahead? Tell me about your strategy, portfolio portfolio management.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys know, I guess with the exception of Jordan, who's a lot younger than I am, my portfolio is tiny compared to you guys. I'm only at about 430,000 at the moment. And so I'm trying to squeeze a lot of income out of 430,000. I think this month I'm going to make about 11,000, maybe a little over 11,000. I feel like if my portfolio was over $1 million, I could be more conservative, right? I could have less ETFs and go with the lower ones. But then having, I guess, higher yielding ETFs, like Perry was saying, I don't want to have too much money in any one of them, just in case, right? They cut the distribution or something negative happens. Also, I find back in 2024, I got, like everybody else, I got into the yield max, funds. And now I am slowly trying to eliminate some of those, get rid of some of the, the holdings that are not performing as well. The other thing I find, I don't know about you guys, but I pick an ETF that I want to get rid of. So I sell off one, but then somebody like Evolve comes out with Biggie and Canny, and I end up buying two more.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to consolidate, but I just can't seem to do it. And now you have 9 points, right? Now we got 9 points has come out. So
yeah. It's a common question I get all the time. How many holdings should I have? A new one comes out. Do I get it? I always say, well, look at the holdings. Look what you're investing in. That's always the top priority. But
and that's funny you say that also, Adrian, is a lot of people say, Perry, you're holding 35 ETFs. You're doing it for diversity, but you're saying that, well, don't you realize that there's so much overlap between all these covered call ETFs that basically your diversity is not there? I'm going, no. Hold on. You don't understand what diversity is. Diversification is not just an underlying diversification. There is covered call strategy diversification. There's fund manager diversification. There's geography diversification. Yeah. So when you want diversification, you want it on many different factors. And so that's why I do diversification, because, for example, the way, and we've seen it actually, you guys, the way Defiance does their strategy is different than Yield Max, is different than Harvest. And you can see both of them will hold MISTI or MSTR, but look at the vast difference between a Harvest MSTE and a Yield Max MSTY and everyone else. And that's because there's diversification in even the strategies they use. So yeah, the other thing I was going to also say to you, Adrian, the old days, there is a maturation process going on in the covered call ETF space in the American side. Maybe you've already seen that, Adriano. We're seeing a lot more maturity with regards to not chasing yield at the cost of yield. Like, for example, you're seeing ETFs coming out like blocks that are now growth oriented as much as they are yield oriented, giving you 35%, but actually seeing their NAV increase. And the other one you're seeing a lot of, and I really love seeing it, and I'm actually including a lot more of them, which might reduce my holding count, is the all-in-ones. You're seeing the one from Granite is just going to be introduced. That's going to cover all of their single stocks. You're going to see Roundhill that basically has WPay that covers all of their single stocks. I really love the era of the all-in-ones starting to show up. So
yeah, I like the all-in-ones too. I'm a fan. Yeah. You could kind of get the all-in-ones of each provider, and you have different, a lot of the same stocks, a lot of overlap, but you have different strategies, which basically means, look, they're all going to perform similarly over time because they have the same stocks. But in a down market, the guys who are writing more covered calls will do better. But over time, you don't want too much covered calls if total return is your priority. So it's all about priority, and it's a good point about diversification of strategies as well. But if people are listening to it and they're newer, how do I know the strategy of each one? Personally, I try to focus that a lot on my channel. This is why I always invite them on and have the fund manager say the strategy. But in Canada, I would say they're fairly similar in terms of right level portfolio coverage. Are actually pretty similar. And like you said, in the US now, The Granite shares all in one, I didn't know, but I know which one you're talking about. The Yield Boost, I think they're called.
The Yield Boost is just going to be releasing an all-in-one in the next week or two.
That's great. That's great. And then you have other ones that are really good. You have Size Team at Tap Alpha. They have some great ones, S&P, NASDAQ. The Roundhill all-in-one. YMAX is a great all-in-one, which if you do YMAX, which everyone that, has a thing about Yield Max, but if you actually do YMAX versus the S&P 500, it's very good performance with like 40, 50, 60% yield with dividends reinvested. So there's a lot of different strategies out there, and my channel tries to focus on trying to give a whole overview of the landscape and then the different strategies. It's about choosing which ones work.
So I got a question for both you and Jordan. And Jordan, maybe if you want to answer it first. The one question I'm getting the most out of in my questions, because that's one didn't ask which questions I was getting. The biggest question I'm getting is, because I'm focused so much on strategy and because I'm Canadian, my base answer on what are my base covered call ETFs to buy are all Canadian, right? So I have the Harvest, the Hamilton, the Evolves, the Global X, and all the ones, and those are my base, my core base. So there's so many subscribers that are American now. I've got a huge influx of American subscribers. I'm just about at 8,000 subscribers right now. And I would say the majority are now becoming American subscribers. Their biggest question is, Perry, I love your strategy. I like the idea that you have a core of 50% that's for the moderate, stable NAV, stable yielding, really good, solid ETFs that you can go to sleep for a month and they come back and they're okay. And then you've got your radical ones, the ultra yielders. I'm in the United States. What ETFs do you recommend for me on those same beautiful ETFs that are in Canada that me as an American, I don't know what to buy? And I honestly don't have an answer. I have sent them, I don't know how many times to your videos to say, follow his ETFs, because I actually don't have an answer for that. So,
well, Perry, you know what? The one, I think, one benefit for me that I get to talk to is like my wife's family lives in the States and has a lot of family in the States. On my side of the family, I have a lot of family in the States, of course, across Canada. So this is something that regularly comes up with my wife's parents, and they've just started investing for the first time in their 60s. And what do you think they're invested in? Covered Call ETFs. Now, I am, because I've never personally got into the ultra yielders myself, I am super picky with them and about what they invest in. But my wife's parents just recently got into the Tap Alpha fund, so that's TDAC, and oh shoot, what's the other one?
T-Spy.
Yeah, T-Spy, that's right, T-Spy. And then the NEOS funds, just for a little fund manager diversification, QQQI and SPY-I. So those are the four that now, granted, like you were just talking about, there's going to be a wave of leverage stuff coming out very soon. There's going to be a wave of this stuff across sort of the light leverage spectrum, where you get the income and growth at the same time, more of like what us Canadians are accustomed to.
Right.
Ironically, my parents actually were invested in like HYLD.U for a while. But because of just tax implications, and again, no tax expert, but basically the way it works is if you're an American invested in Canadian listed stuff, even though it holds American stuff, that is you're gonna draw upon the worst taxation, which is at your
foreign taxes
employment income tax level. So we had to get them out of that, but so they're just going to stay in the American stuff for now. But as far as like my father-in-law, he's looking for like an HHIS kind of, or a biggie style of fund in the US. He doesn't, and again, HHIS just is either it's out now or it's about to come out with HHIS.U. But again, it's like that would be a great fund for him. He wants that.
Yeah.
But because it's on the Canadian side, it just causes tax implications that way. Right. So if a fund manager, American fund manager, can like, I mean, I've said these in the videos, it's like, man, like study these Canadian guys, because each can draw upon the other, but there are things like Biggie and HHIS I think many Americans would appreciate to still get that growth like they have seen from HHIS. It's a proof of concept.
Yeah. Well, and that's the funny thing you said that, because that's exactly what it is. There is a big missing tooth in the American covered call ETF market. You could either get something that's 12% or lower in yield. It will be rock solid. It will grow, but you're getting 12, 10, 8% like Jeppy and that. They're getting very low yields. Or you can go way on the other side that are 40%, 50, 60%. But that nice juicy middle between, say, 10 to 20% or 25%, which is just the sweet spot for the Canadian covered call ETFs. Solid NAV, solid performance, guaranteed boring monthly distributions because it's always the same. And the Americans just don't have many options on that side, right?
It's common, at least to closer to the 20 and then 20 above. Personally, I don't know what's coming at that point. 20
I
to
think it's
30.
coming. I have some inclination.
I'm sure it
that
is.
It's coming as well.
What about WPay from Roundhill?
Yeah,
Well,
WPay is good.
Kind of like an HHIS,
that's not covered
right?
call though. That's not covered call, guys.
No, that one's a swap agreement, but it's one of those all-in-ones, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Yeah, think of it like they're getting 25, it's 20, I think it's 20% amplification, but it's all capital gains. Think of it like you're buying a portfolio and they're just selling a little bit for you every week. They have an algorithm to figure out how much to give out. It's really actually good as a high yielding drawdown if you're not a fan of covered calls. That's what it's designed for. If you don't want the covered calls. But in the US,
I'm pretty sure XPay is like very similar to that, and that's another Roundhill product. 20%.
Yeah, XPay is exact same concept.
No covered calls, and it's just a decumulation strategy.
It's a decumulation of the S&P 500. Yeah,
right.
I think.
And
so.
I did see, for example, I think correct me if I'm wrong. You know better than me, Adriano. It's either Defiance or YieldMax that are coming out with target yielders at 25% or something like that.
Defiance has target 20, right?
Target 20, so it must be yield
PI and QQQ tie.
Yeah, Defiance has. Yeah, and those have been performing okay. I mean, Rex Shares is the first, I think, that's launched the actually lightly leveraged covered call ETFs. They only have 4 single tickers: the Strategy, MSII, Tesla, Nvidia, and I think another one. But I'm sure like 25% leverage versions are coming. Defiance tried to launch one with MSTR, but it has a lot of leverage, so that one's not the same. But I think they're coming. But I mean, in the US, you have plenty of options. I have a monthly series where I go over all of them. And Perry, if a new investor comes to you and asks you what should I invest in, that's solid and whatever, what are you going to say typically? The S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100. Right. So in the US, there's a million S&P 500, NASDAQ 100, even Russell 2000 covered call ETFs. And NEOS is one of the best ones. Tap Alpha is one of the best ones. And you even have Goldman Sachs that has the 8 to 10%. You have the NEOS, which is 12 to 14. And you have the Tap Alpha, which is probably going to be 14 to 16.
Oh, okay. All right.
So the yields are actually pretty high. The yields are pretty high, but we don't have like a concentrated biggie HHIS style yet with 25% leverage to get you that 25-30% yield. But I have a feeling they're coming as well.
Yeah. I like, I don't know if anybody still has FEPI, but I like FEPI for 25%. And then
classic tech for FEPI,
AIPI is 35%.
Yeah.
Right.
So those two, I still hold on to those.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could combine, like a T-SPY TDAC and maybe like a FEPI AIPI to get to that 20% yield overall. There's a lot more choice in the US, I think. It's a lot of options, and you could basically get those yield targets if you mix and match.
Yeah, that's the one, because that's the biggest question I seem to get on my YouTube channel, other than like you said, Paul, which again, I basically have a scripted answer almost now. It's like, what should I buy? I have $100,000. What should I buy? It's like, whoa. I said, hold on a second. You don't even know what your goals are. I said, let's take a step back here. I said, before, I can't tell you that because I don't even know who you are. I said,
I get
that's
those.
Why I send it to my videos. And I said, first figure out a strategy, and then let's talk about what you want to. Remember, we said, then we'll put the Lego blocks into your build, right? So,
yeah, for sure.
It's almost as if maybe Harvest and Hamilton or Evolve could open up in the US and launch. Yes.
Hey, who knows? I mean, the future looks bright, like PBD says. So I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I wouldn't even be surprised. I know we talked to them about it. It's very hard to do it
Yes.
different exchange, different rules. The US is even more crazy with the compliance apparently. So
Right.
we'll see what happens. This is the cool thing that, you get to talk to fund managers about this stuff. It's really fun.
Well, and I like the idea of the competition now. Like, obviously, there was an exponential growth of covered call ETFs just as I decided to do covered call ETFs. Like,
you guys are all lucky.
Was an explosion.
You guys are lucky that you started in 2022, 2023. Just 2-3 years ago when I started and went all in, there was none of this stuff existed. The first breakthrough was HDIV. I remember when I saw HDIV and I saw, okay, this is a collection of a bunch of covered calls with 25% leverage to get you a little bit higher yield. That was what I think opened the floodgates. And I think Harvest launched their own pretty much at the same time or just a few weeks later, a collection of the Harvest ones with 25% leverage. And after that, that's all she wrote. Now it's like we have so many amazing choices. It's just incredible. Too many choices, but if you're new, you're going to get overwhelmed. If you're a veteran, this is exciting time because you know what you're doing, and maybe you could swap. And that's another criticism I've gotten, by the way. I always say buy and hold, and then people say, well, Adrian, you're always swapping out of anyone's. Well, that's not it. I'm not selling to make capital gains. I'm swapping, I'm selling to update my portfolio, streamline it, make it better.
I call it organic growth. It's organic growth because now I don't contribute to my portfolio, right? I'm not actively depositing, and I'm actually pulling money out of my portfolio. Right. So how do I keep it growing? How do I keep it getting better?
Gotta reinvest a little bit.
Not just reinvesting, but
rebalancing.
Rebalancing, right? Like say I used to have HDIV, I got rid of HDIV and I went into ENCL when ENCL was paying like 21%. So you automatically increase your income without having to deposit.
You could do that. You could swap and do that, but you're technically that move would be an increase in risk. Right? Technically. Right? Because you're going HDIV, maybe 90, 100 companies to just 10 oil and gas in Canada. So people need to remember that's when people say yield chasing, I think that's kind of the trap where I'm just going to go with, they just look at the number and then they're stuck with a bunch of oil and gas stocks and higher MST and higher volatility stuff. And then when there's a broad-based market crash, they're going down much harder than the market because riskier assets tend to go down more. So I try to tell people, look, if you're just starting, build yourself a core foundation. That's why I came up with the grade 16. Now there's even the grade 18, or there's so many of them in Canada now. I got to redo that video, of course, but you guys know what I'm saying, right? So
started with the grade 8.
Remember that? Yeah.
Well, and that's a funny thing you're mentioning. The strategy is and I actually have a video on how do you rebalance. Like there's a strategy behind rebalancing, and Adriana, you touched on it exactly. If you have a good portfolio, and a part of the portfolio is to identify your target weights for the ETFs that are in your portfolio. And basically my spreadsheet is always tracking actual to target weight. If I'm underweight on something and I see another one that's basically been overappreciated, for example, PLTE, which is basically appreciated in value 80%, I can consider rebalancing, moving it down, and then basically using the money to feed into another ETF that I already knew I was underweight on. So you got to do it strategically, not just yield chase and say, hey, I just saw that one over there. And you've literally moved away from something that's not strategic.
There's a million ways of doing it. I think, Perry, you're the most active. And honestly, I know people that have 1 or 2 ETFs, and that's it. An HDIV, an HH paired with an HHIS, or a USCL and a QQCL. I just want the S&P and the NASDAQ. This is where I always say there's no right or wrong. It's really up to you. Are you focusing on a certain amount of yield? Or you want a little bit more stability and you're very happy with 12%, 13%? So this is where there's no right or wrong. So I think we spent a lot of time here, guys. I think we should maybe wrap up. I don't know if anyone has anything else. Here, maybe we could end on what's the most exciting ETF you think in Canada right now, in terms of strategy and in terms of what's new that's come out and that you've added to your portfolio, for example. Maybe we could go with that.
Mm-hmm. Paul?
Paul, you want to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, go
first. Anyway, I remember when I saw HHIS for the first time and, going through the ETF facts and the prospectus, talking with others about it. I was I was hesitant at first, but I just wanted to wait to see what it could do. And what I thought it could do is exactly what it did. And so I
Mhm.
waited about 6 months before I made the leap into HHIS and then broke away from that into Biggie as again just the proof of concept. So again, I think right now, it's things like HHIS and Biggie as a component to the portfolio to be in these sort of Mag 7 FANG companies where a vast majority of the S&P 500 finds its returns or gets its returns in. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just a quick side story. Yeah, this was back in I think the end of 2021, but a coworker of mine came to me just as I was fairly new to investing, but showed me a bank statement or an investing statement of an almost $200,000 portfolio. And the person, I kid you not, made $9 all year, not investing in any of these right? Like wherever this money was invested, it made nothing. And
Yeah,
so,
probably all fixed income crap.
or something, well, gee, it's like who knows? But it was just crazy to me. But anyway, nine bucks on a almost $200,000 portfolio. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, so having a bit of a, a third of my own portfolio invested in these concentrated funds to get a little bit more of that natural appreciation has become a nice wedge inside of the portfolio to just evolve it in such a way to get a total return that most of the critics of this strategy easily bring up. And so these are certainly funds that have proven themselves. They are a rocket in the good times. They're an anchor in the not so great times. So you just got to understand what you're picking up when you add more of it to your portfolio.
Awesome.
Well,
Oh,
I get to go next. All
yeah.
right. Well, since Jordan already said HHIS and Biggie, what I'll give a shout out to something different. I think actually one of the best ones that have come out recently is the Hamilton, the new series of Hamilton funds, Q Day, S Day, and C Day, with the different underlying holding. What is it? Holds a different ETF
Yeah.
where it's actually 100% not covered, right?
Yeah.
And then they have leverage where they're writing their calls on the VU or something else. So
Yeah.
you get the best of both worlds, right? And I believe it's zero DTE.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's I mean it's there you go. See, it's another strategy, right? So even though I already own maybe a Hamilton ETF or a Harvest ETF, now we have a new strategy that I could add to my portfolio. So I think I really like those ones, and they've done well so far.
Yeah. I
And
was
they
actually
pay by
gonna
monthly.
I was gonna mention those, that now they've been added to the HYLD and HDIV. So this is another fund manager that I really, really like because they know what they're doing. For example, they took out the bond stuff, they put the new Daymax ones in it. And I think these are genius strategies. I agree. These are very exciting, they're very new, they're very different. I think the C Day one is one that's very special because what I've noticed, and you tell me what you guys think about this, doing covered calls just straight up on Canadian stocks doesn't seem to work as good as doing it on the US stocks. Is it because there's less option liquidity, less volatility? I think those are a factor. The options market is probably not as advanced, not as big in Canada. So this is why I think C Day is a game changer because basically what they've done is we're going to give you access to 25 Canadian dividend stock aristocrats, right? All this, the banks and the insurance and some oil and gas, some gold. We're going to put 25% leverage, only do zero DTE covered calls on only that 25%, only on that leverage portion. At the money, covered at the money zero DT covered calls on the S&P, you'll get 18 to 20% yield, and you'll get full organic growth of those Canadian dividend stocks, which it doesn't seem like doing covered calls on that. So I just found it's a nice little twist versus the current, the Canny and HHIC and the 9.1 and anything else on the cover call. So this is what we're talking about when these strategies are evolving and that covered call strategy. Gone are the days where you just have QYLD and that's it, like the steam engine of strategies, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and
I think you nailed it there, Adriano. The problem is the options chain and the Canadian stocks are just too thin. They're too
I think
short.
so. I think
They can't make the yields that they want in the US. So it was a very innovative idea for Hamilton to actually put their zero DTE and their options chain on the US holding, and then basically use the Canadians to give you that growth and stability on the Canadian.
It's unbelievable. It's like dividend investing meets covered call investing with those Daymax. Really, really cool. And you know, I'm with Jordan, of course. HHIS. It didn't take me 6 months. I think it took me 6 seconds to invest in it. I knew it was going to be a hit. I love the guys at Harvest. They know what they're doing. We took a tour of their office. We sat down with Paul McDonald with the screens, and he was just walking me through. I'm like, can I just see MSTE? Let me see the option stuff. And he was showing me this and that. And like 30 minutes later, I had no idea what he was saying, but he's great. I mean, these guys are dead serious. They're focused on the options. They look at it every day. They want to make sure they pay out the distribution and nothing more, and try to capture as much upside. So these guys are experts. They're very, very serious.
It's funny you even said that.
Nick Picard and Hamilton, same thing.
Same thing. Nick Picard is like a math whiz. Yeah.
And it's funny you said that, but actually, because Paul and I had a meeting with the Harvest executives there, and they brought up a really good point there, because some of the arguments I've seen on some of the channels, like Retire on Dividends and stuff of them, they do more of a DIY. I'm going to do my own options. I'm going to write my own chains, because you know what? I can do what the ETF covered call ETFs do, but I can do better. And they said that it was funny. The Harvest says, I'm not saying this to boast, but we will beat you every day to Sunday because of two reasons. One, we have an entire team that watches it all the time. And two, we have access to options chains that you as a retailer can't see. So between those two, I can assure you, you will not beat us in the long run on writing your own options versus us doing it as a covered call.
There's no way. They got market makers. They got connections on the market. They got the Bloomberg terminals. Forget it. Forget it.
Yeah, you won't beat them.
No.
So,
they got years of experience. They got years of experience. Yeah.
I don't even want to try.
Exactly.
No, I don't even want to try.
I don't even have options enabled on my account.
Never had it enabled. Don't care. Let the professionals. They want to take 0.65% a year, which is what $6 for every $1,000.
Yeah,
that's so. I mean, come on. I mean, that's nothing compared to what you're getting. You just the monthly income shows up.
Well, and that's the funny thing you say that, Adrian, because that's again yet another argument that the other side there, that the radicals use, is like, look at the high MER you're being charged. You're like, they're charging at 1%. I'm going, hold on a second. You're getting 25 to 35% yield, and you're worried about 1%. It's like,
well, first of all, it's because it includes
a percentage now.
They're a percentage of that. Yeah.
It includes a leverage cost. So what the fund managers are actually making themselves is only the management fees,
right?
It's not the MER. The MER includes leverage costs, trading costs, administrative costs. That stuff, taxes, all that stuff they have to pay. What they're actually taking in as revenue is the management fee. The MER includes leverage costs, and trust me, you're not going to get leverage costs cheaper than them. They manage 7 to 10 billion. Harvest, Hamilton, Evolve, they're all at over 7 billion AUM. So
it's crazy, and yet they use that as an argument, is that even with the MER being like, even when you wrap the entire MER on it, they're bitching about 1%. It's like, again, look at what you're getting as a yield, as a total yield, right? So, and
as a total return as well,
and a total return. I shouldn't just say yield, a total return, right? So So this is my favorite. Sorry, just to pick. I hate saying it because it's the same as what Adriano and Jordan would do. I have to call out HHIS if you're talking about which one would be a favorite, in the form that it was a game changer. Again, you're now seeing so many competitors. You're now seeing Biggie show up, and Canny and HHIC and everybody else. So I'm not saying they are now the biggest with regards to yield, but they were the ones that introduced it and leveraging and all that in the Canadian market. We already had Yield Max doing all-in-ones with their Yield Max. but to actually see a mature, stable Canadian covered call ETF that actually was doing all-in-ones on single stocks and getting yields up in the 25% range. I mean, you have to say, in my opinion, HHIS was the game changer if I had to pick one out, because it was the first of the all-in-ones on single stocks that the US was doing and Canada was not yet doing. So
yeah, I got to give props real quick to Harvest ETFs because, you know, as a smaller fund manager, they could move quicker than the mid to big boys. And I was so happy to see them take out the guardrails. Well, now because they had put max 15 stocks and they maxed it out. We're going to take that off. And now we're going to put in the 4 new ones like Reddit and Circle and SoFi, which are all very volatile. So you know the yield is probably going to go up on that thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Adds more diversification. It just makes me feel more comfortable because instead of 15, now you have 19 stocks, and a lot of these are very innovation hot stocks, which means people need to remember this isn't covered call income strategy. It's based on volatility. So if you're going to put a lot of more of the more volatile stocks in there, you're going to get an extremely high yield, which is the whole concept behind the Alti ETF from YieldMax, by the way. Right? We're just going to get some of the most highest yield. But Harvest, they toned it down a little bit. They said, you know what, we'll put the Apple and the Google and the Microsoft, the Mag 7, but we'll add the Coinbase, the Strategy, the Reddit, the SoFi, whatever it is. So I find it's like really nicely balanced.
Right.
So yeah, that's my biggest position in terms of anchor, but I have other anchors as well. I would say HYLD is another anchor I have. QQCL, just classic NASDAQ 100. Those are, I would say, my 3 anchors in my portfolio. And then I have some more exotic stuff like the Bitcoin and the MSTE, which I'm a believer in, you know, Sailor, et cetera, et cetera.
And it's funny, I had QQCL for the longest time. It appreciated so much in NAV that I actually regrettably sold out of it so that I can buy more HHIS and Biggie, because other than that, I loved QQCL, but that was market timing. I got it beautifully at the right time in 2023 when it was only in the teens. And of course it went up from there. So it was just a perfect time to rebalance it. But I hated actually getting out of it because it's been a rock star, even though it's been a, you know, stable NAV.
Very stable. Yeah.
Very stable NAV. Yeah. Appreciating NAV. So
yeah, the USCL as well. So Global X Canada, which is completely apart, by the way, from Global X US. We determined that they do their own thing, which is good. They have a really good cover call strategy as well, and they're actually, I think they're the most transparent. They're actually the moneyness of the options right there on the fund. You could actually see how the portfolio coverage and the moneyness of the options are actually the most transparent. But on QQCL, it's basically 50% close to at the money. But there is 125% leverage. So it's similar to what Evolve's doing with Biggie at 133, right? So you do 133 divided by 2 or 125 divided by 2. You're getting about 63% upside of the NASDAQ with that income. So if the NASDAQ does well, you know, I think HHIS and Biggie to me are like concentrated QQCL. That's how I see it personally. So of course, if the whole market sells off, the NASDAQ sells off, QQCL will probably go down 2%, but HHIS and Biggie will go down maybe 3%, 4%. So it's more of a stabilizer, you know, NASDAQ 100 stabilizer. So.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
All right, guys. Well, we've gone long.
We've gone very long. This was fun, though.
This was great. This was great. I'll shout out the American viewers and say that T-Spy from Tap Alpha is
that's my favorite.
Unbelievable performance.
We've been,
and TDAC's going to be good too, I think.
Yeah, that's true. We hang out with a bunch of Americans here, and that's what we always tell them to get into because
I always tell everybody to buy T-Spy and now TDAC.
It's a no-brainer. Very close performance to S&P, 14% yield. What more do you want?
When Adriano, when you interviewed the CEO, is it Sai Katera?
Jordan's interviewed him too.
I could tell right away this guy was brilliant.
And
you know, I just started buying T-Spy.
For Canadians in the RSP, if you want a basic boring S&P with the yield, whether you're dripping or not, living off of it or not, T-Spy is a good choice. Even the guys at Neos do a pretty good job. Goldman
Yep.
Sachs. There's a lot of index-based covered call ETFs in the States, but the Top Alpha guys see, because it's a zero DTE, I think they kind of mastered the zero DTE. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
But thanks,
All right,
guys. This has
guys.
been incredible.
This was
Yeah, it
really
was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
to the audience, if you like this, if you enjoy, let us know. Let us know your comments of what other topics you want us to talk about. Do you want us to go a little deeper in the funds, the ETFs, the strategies, or more personal stuff, a little mix of both? And of course, make sure to hit that like button. I'll put the links to everyone's channel in the video description as well. And guys, maybe we'll do this a monthly thing. Definitely not 2 hours, but we could make it a monthly occurrence if you guys are up to it.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
everyone.
Happy
Take care.
Thanksgiving. Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right. Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, everyone. Take care.
Bye.